Christopher Pyne, thanks for joining us. Tell me your definition of innovation.
Well, innovation to the government means businesses that are prepared to basically try something new. And what the government wants to do is support that, invest in that, allow that to happen, create the ecosystem where that is easy to do. Now, in Australia, we are very conservative about taking risks. We haven't needed to be risk takers because we've had mining and agriculture, tourism, international education and so forth, so many natural advantages. But we want to move the economy to a place where all people, but also young people in particular, think if I try something different, if I innovate what's happening now, make it better, try something no one's ever thought of before, the government will back me to do that.
Okay, so how is the government backing them to do that?
Well, we've introduced 24 measures under the National Innovation and Science Agenda. They cover 4 areas. One is changing culture and helping people to raise capital. One is the government as an exemplar, so how we behave ourselves. STEM, so support for science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And the commercialisation of research. So where we're already doing wonderful things in research, we are hopeless at commercialising it. So we're number 6 in the world for quality, number 32 in the world for commercialising those research peaks. But for young people in innovation, it's the changing of capital raising that I think is particularly exciting.
So what steps are you've got new crowdfunding rules coming in, which have passed the lower house.
Yeah.
Got to say, not hugely received in the startup ecosystem, saying we've missed a bit of an opportunity here. Do you think you've been badly advised in that area?
I think what's happened with crowdfunding is that we are taking steps, we're making haste slowly, as they used to say. So the Treasury's pretty conservative. There are some people in the startup sector who would like to basically throw out the rule book and say, let's just let laissez-faire operate, and if people take risky investments, you know, they can lose their money and start again. There are others in the government who say that's all very well, but those people will say to us, if they fail and lose their money, what did the government do to protect my interests? So we have to have a balance in how we approach crowdfunding. One of the other things we're doing though, which I think is particularly exciting, is freeing up things like access to venture capital. So we're rewarding angel investors with a capital gains tax exemption for assets held between 3 and 10 years, and reducing their income tax liability with the 20% non-refundable tax write-off.
Right, but the detail of that hasn't come out yet, has it? And that's what a lot of the VCs are saying, and investors, look, we're not quite sure how it's going to come out and what the detail is, and it's going to take a while. I'm
getting lots of positive reinforcement from the sector, but they do want to see where the rubber hits the road. So there's a consultation process with all these tax measures, so that's a slower part of the agenda. So we're quickly moving, for example, for entrepreneurs' visas and making it easier for people to come to Australia and start a new idea, as long as they have support from one of the venture capital limited partnerships. But it's slower to socialise tax changes because the tax office quite rightly says we need to consider all the particular, jagged edges of this policy that might come up. They need to consult with people. People like to be consulted. But 1st of July is the start date for that. It'll be very clear before that what we're going to do. If the bill hasn't passed, if there is a bill that hasn't passed for whatever reason, because it can't find room on the agenda or whatever, we could still start the measure, and similar as we have in the past, David, we can then pass legislation later on as long as we know what the rules are before they start.
So 1st of July, definite?
That's the start date for the angel investors tax change.
Okay, and you're unlikely to push that back? That's almost a guarantee you'll definitely do it?
With Malcolm, what he says is these dates that have been set are the farthest dates possible. Now, for example, the insolvency law changes that we want to bring in to make it easier for people to fail but start again, if you like, if they go bankrupt but start again soon, or not see their businesses, the shutters come down on their business as soon as somebody hears word that they might be in difficulty, which happens right now under our rather archaic insolvency laws. The start date for those is 2017, but as Malcolm says, we'll start them as soon as they're ready. And then if we need to tweak them, we'll tweak them. I mean, because Malcolm is a business person, he says, let's try these ideas. If they don't succeed, we should admit they didn't succeed and try something different. Because government has always been so scared about making a decision. Malcolm's view is, let's get on with it and we can always change it. If you're in business, you're trying a product line, it doesn't work, you dump it and try another one.
Yep.
And Malcolm's view is, to give you an example, when we launched the NISA, one of the journalists asked Malcolm, what happens if these measures don't work? He said, well, if they don't work, we'll dump them and try new ones. And the press gallery was stupefied because they're used to the government saying, but we're always right about everything. These will work.
Yep.
Whereas Malcolm just was open about it.
Yep. Do you have a model you're basing it on? Singapore has taken a lot of our startups. Enormous competition for us there.
They're very agile.
Yeah. Do we have to be as agile as that? Is that the model to compete against Singapore as a haven for startups in that digital space?
We are taking bits of different jurisdictions. So we have, for example, borrowed the SBRI from the United States, which is essentially their competition for businesses who say, we think government services could be delivered better, and the US pays a business some money to start the idea. If they think that they're right about it, they give them extra money. So our BRI, our Business Research Innovation Incentive, $100,000 for people to come up with ideas. If we think that can be developed, $1 million to turn it into a prototype. So we borrowed from the United States. We borrowed from the UK but gone further on capital gains tax and income tax changes and other parts of our commercialisation of research, which is less publications, more outcomes. We borrowed from Israel, from the chief scientist, has had a big impact on Malcolm's and my thinking, which is that he says that they had to convince the Israeli public that the government investing in startups that failed wasn't the end of the world, that in fact it was adding to a stronger Israel, a stronger economy, because business people that fail the first, second, third, fourth time, they might succeed incredibly the fifth time and put all the money back into the economy and into the government's coffers that they've so far not been able to succeed in doing for the first few times. So that's a way of thinking we'll have to change in Australia, and Malcolm prepared to see the long-term view about that.
Okay. How comfortable are you in this area? Like ministers get given all sorts of things that they've got to quickly adapt to. That's politics. But do you have a passion for startups? Do you have a passion for innovation?
That's a good question. Look, I'm a doer, and I was a lawyer before I was in politics. So, the job of a lawyer is to see a client come through the door and work for that client. That might be a client in trucking industry. I'm not an expert in the trucking industry, but if the client is a person in the trucking industry, you've got to find out all about it and represent them. It might be in hospitals, it might be a medical negligence case. You've got to find out about medical negligence and how hospitals and doctors work. So lawyers tend to see all sides of the argument. That's our training. Whatever side we've been given, we've got to look at what your side might put up and how to knock it down and what we want to promote. So we tend to be very flexible. I wouldn't say I was an innovation or startups expert like Malcolm is. Malcolm's instinctively interested in this space. But hopefully I'm a quick study, and I was given the job in September, and we launched the National Innovation and Science Agenda in December, and it's the first of the government's big economic announcements, and so far it's going pretty well.
How have you found dealing with this whole startup ecosystem? Do you get... I find it incredibly inspiring, these young brains who do this extraordinary stuff.
It's exhilarating.
Sort of keeps you young, and you think, hell, that's the future.
I'm a natural suit wearer, so I find the innovations in the startup space, I call them the T-shirt brigade. And we had a meeting last week with a group of 8 vice-chancellors and their advisors on innovation and startups, and because they've got their own innovation fund, which hopefully the G8's established, a couple of $100 million, and we support that. And it was 8 vice-chancellors in suits and about 8 T-shirt wearers, and it was very stark, the difference between the cultures. And Amanda Vanstone, who's a great friend of mine, would say that I used to wear a suit to the beach. Of course, that's very unkind. I wear neoprene to the beach. But it's certainly different to my culture over the last 30 years as a lawyer and now.
But you get inspired by it. Has it opened your eyes to
I find it remarkable. I find them very, not casual isn't the right word, but they're very engaging and they're not caught up with formality, so they're informal. When you go into an accelerator or an incubator, for example, they come up and talk to me, not as a cabinet minister with responsibility for this area, but what can you do to help our businesses to grow and help my friend down the corridor.
Do you find that refreshing?
I find it very refreshing. It's very Australian though, but it's also very Israeli. So when I was in Israel in December, it was a very similar kind of attitude.
It's different to dealing with the business council, isn't it?
Well,
And that's the gulf
that is big
between
gulf.
in the thinking, isn't it really? The business council, big end of town, want a culture like a startup, sometimes don't understand how to do it because...
Big business is slow moving. I mean, they are behemoths by their very definition. It's very hard for a Telstra to act nimbly. That said, I've been incredibly impressed with businesses like Telstra, Commonwealth Bank, for example. So that day we announced the National Innovation Science Agenda. We put $26 million into quantum computing. The next day, Telstra announced 10 million. Commonwealth Bank the day after that, 10 million. So 26 became 46. And this is a part of our economy that had been starved of funds and was saying, you know, where's the next dollar coming from? Suddenly they're the richest people at the University of New South Wales.
Would you ever invest in a startup?
Well, I did start a startup once. I was the proprietor of a cleaning firm.
No, a digital startup.
It wasn't very innovative.
It's very Rust Belt.
It wasn't very innovative. No. But that was 1989 or something.
Would you invest in a tech startup, digital
Once
startup?
my 4 children have finished schooling and I might have some spare cash, I would certainly consider it, definitely.
Right.
But right now it's not a good environment for ministers to be investing in anything.
Right.
I think it's best to keep your money in your house at the moment, is my view.
That is a point.
Bricks and mortar.
The role of White Roy, is he important in, if you like, bridging a generational gap in thinking in politics from that?
Well, White is very enthusiastic. I was enthusiastic once too, David, when I was 25 years old and I got elected to Parliament all those years ago. He's a wonderful foil because he is out there talking to all those people constantly, listening to every idea, proposing all those ideas to me as his cabinet minister. My job is to say, don't think we can afford that, don't think we can do this, that sounds like a good idea, let's make more about that, let's unpack this particular idea. Wyatt is very, very interested in policy, and I've been very pleased to have him as the Assistant Minister. A lot of the ideas in the NISA were things that he had been talking to people in the sector about. I think one of the reasons that the NISA was as well received as it has been is because a lot of people in the sector thought there's not much more that the government could have announced because we've talked to them about all these things. And people like Alan Finkel and Bill Ferris, who are older innovators, were very impressed. And Ian Chubb, of course, who is the chief scientist, but he's a very conservative, some would say curmudgeonly scientist, a good friend of mine. He said that it exceeded his wildest dreams, and I'd never heard him use the phrase wildest dreams in my life before, so I thought that was a particularly good support for our NISA. So I think most people in the sector expected half of what we delivered, so it's been, I think, a good development.
I always think Adelaide could be the Boston of Australia in terms of startups, higher education, the whole lot. Which states are doing it well?
Well, Sydney is doing it well, but you'd expect that.
Yeah.
Because it's got 6.5, 7 million people and a great deal of scale.
Yeah.
And they've also got that culture of being prepared to try new things and fail, which the rest of Australia is a lot more conservative. Brisbane's doing a good job. Actually, Adelaide has got a lot of potential and is doing quite a good job. But they are pretty conservative about change, and the taxes are too high. There's a bit of an anti-development culture in the public service. There's quite a bit of regulation and red tape. I know that Jay Weatherill would like to sweep quite a bit of that away. He and I talk about this a lot. The fundamentals are there. The Theberton precinct, the innovation precinct there is actually kicking some real goals. I remember when that first got started. It's now got quite a thriving hub. The University of South Australia, for example, has a terrific incubator program there. And the 3 universities are high quality. They've got the precinct on North Terrace with SAMRI, the potential for SAMRE too. Their medical research is second to none. I think after Melbourne and Adelaide would be the two sort of centres of medical research, which can be very, very lucrative, as well as being very good and useful to do. So I wouldn't say they've dropped the ball. I think they're coming off a smaller base because they've got a smaller business community there that are prepared to invest. And if I was the South Australian government, I would be putting some tax incentives into moving to South Australia. That's what I'd be saying. You know, let's be like Indianapolis was in the 90s and think, what are the things we could do well? Like Jeff Kennett did in Melbourne, for example, and said he's going to be the sporting hub of Australia, and did wonderful investments in infrastructure, which is why Melbourne is the sporting hub of Australia in many respects. If I was the South Australian government, I'd say let's, you know, put a lot of incentive into bringing startups, technology, medical researchers to Adelaide.
And going after the big fish. Like when Google were looking for a new headquarters,
put it there.
I said to Joe at the footy, pay me anything to move to Adelaide because you'll just attract everybody else. You need those big.
And the other big advantage that Adelaide's got, David, of course, is the defence industry. Very high tech, lots of advanced manufacturing, but lots of high tech. And the spin-offs, when they think they're investigating something for a submarine or a future frigate or whatever they're doing, or radar, like out of Edinburgh, the Jindalee, etc., they discover something else. And we need to commercialise that something else, and having commercialised it, make money out of it.
It's all in the thinking though.
You've got to be open to it.
I reckon that's the hard part of this whole innovation policy, is just getting the thinking to change and be dynamic.
And take risks and fail. You know, that's where Australia hasn't needed to do that in the past, but we are wanting to do it now. I mean, I went to a fantastic launch in Sydney about 2 weeks ago of Australia's 100 best graduate-friendly businesses. So there's a group of 3 young blokes. I think they all went to Adelaide Uni, but only one of them was from South Australia. They were from country New South Wales and Victoria. They created Australia's 100 best graduate employers as a scheme about 2 or 3 years ago. And they are highlighting to graduates out of uni, these are the businesses that will give you a really good experience as a new graduate employee. And they're being supported by all sorts of fantastic Australian businesses, but there were 200 young people at this function, all of them desperate to try new things and make money and employ people and create businesses.
It's fabulous.
It's fantastic.
It is just great.
That's inspiring. So when you say, is this my natural fit? It's my natural fit to want to see jobs and growth.
And also new innovative thinking. That's right.
And move beyond the old industrial base that we have. Like, I'm a South Australian, born and bred. We're very used to manufacturing. We can still be used to manufacturing, but it's got to be advanced, high-tech, high-quality, niche manufacturing that the rest of the world says, if only we had the capacity to do that, but they've got it in Adelaide or they've got it in Melbourne. We can do all that, and we're doing it. We just need to do a lot more of it.
Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.